Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Moving to Australia podcast. In today's episode, we discuss how one can apply for a carer visa to care for someone in Australia who has no reasonable access to care options. The two visa subclasses that fall under the carer visa category are Subclass 116 and Subclass 836, both of which are permanent resident visas. With me in the studio to discuss how one can become eligible to apply for this visa, sponsorship obligations and carer obligations is Amitava Deb. Amitava, how have you been?
Good, Arun. It has been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a very long time. You had a busy October.
Yeah. Festivals have started. I guess the Indian festivals, and I was away as well.
All right. So this morning you mentioned to me that a lot of people have reached out to you trying to know how they can apply for a carer visa to care for someone in Australia who has no reasonable access to medical options. Mm-hmm. So tell me, how can an Australian citizen or a permanent resident be considered suitable to sponsor someone for a carer visa?
Yeah, okay. Before I answer this question, let me just give a bit of a background. Many in Australia who call me, they have a misunderstanding of carer visa. Some people, there are two categories of misunderstanding. Number one is someone needs a care, they are not well, and they think they can get anyone from overseas to come and care for them. Yeah, that is not true. Number two, someone says they have parents in their home country who need care, and they want to bring them here on a carer visa so they can care for them. The answer is it is neither of these two. Neither of these two, because it cannot be, the carer visa is not for anyone who is able to provide care. It is different to the care worker visa, which is part of skilled migration or employer nominated migration. This one is carer visa where an eligible relative can come and care for someone who is an Australian citizen or a permanent resident in an ongoing manner.
When you say relative, can you define that? What the government means by that?
So a relative could be your spouse, or a spouse who has not yet been granted a partner visa, or it can be an eligible relative as defined in the Migration Act. An eligible relative must be a child, a nephew, niece, aunt, uncle, grandparent, grandchild, brother, sister, or parent. So cousins cannot be eligible relative. First cousins cannot be eligible relative.
Okay. So what are the key differences between the two, Subclass 116 and Subclass 836?
Any category of visa that starts with number 8 is onshore, usually. Any category of visa that starts with number 1 is offshore. So they all come in pairs. Child visa has something that starts with 1, another one that starts with 8. Similarly, carer visa, it has got 836 and 116. 116 is offshore, 836 is onshore. That is the main difference.
And is there a difference in cost?
The cost is exactly the same, but there are other benefits. Do you want me to?
Yeah, if you can just drill it down.
So the first benefit is when someone applies for any visa onshore, first of all, they need to have a visa to come here onshore and be allowed to apply for another visa, which means they should not have a condition 8503, for example, which prohibits them from applying for a visa when in Australia. So let's assume that person has a visa to come onshore, like a visitor visa, which does not have that condition. They apply onshore. As soon as they apply for any visa onshore, they will get a bridging visa. The bridging visa will be granted but not active. It will become active when the current visa the visitor visa or whatever they are holding expires. When the bridging visa is active, they can continue to live here until this visa is granted, the carer visa. It takes a long time to process this visa. It could take, I had a client who applied in 2018. They got the visa approved in 2023. 5 years, which is not so bad if you can compare with other family visas. 5 years to grant the visa.
But can you attribute that delay due to COVID?
No, it's just the normal processing time. It could be even more as more and more people are getting added. And as a carer, you are here to care for a person. So when you get a bridging visa, usually the bridging visa will carry over the rights of the substantive visa you held when you applied for the carer visa. So for example, if you hold visitor visa and you apply for carer visa, the conditions of the visitor visa will be carried forward to the carer visa, to the bridging visa, and that will be no work. You can, however, provide evidence of hardship and say that you want to work. Usually it will not be granted because you have applied to be a carer full-time. It is for someone who requires care. So why would you want to work? In fact, one of the conditions or one of the prerequisites, not conditions, of the application is that you have a sponsor. And the sponsor usually is the person requiring care who has money but is not able to look after himself or herself. So they should be able to fund your stay, and in return you are able to provide care for them.
I was about to come to that. So as a sponsor, do you need to be first assessed as someone requiring care?
So this is talking about the sponsor who requires care? Yes, so they have to go through an assessment through BUPA. It's called Assessment for Carer Visa. If you go to the BUPA website, bupamvs.com.au, there will be a section which says Assessment for Carer Visa. So they will conduct a thorough assessment, and they will not give you the report. It will be handed over to you in a sealed envelope, which you will have to post. It's a paper-based application, post to the Carer Visa Center.
So what other eligibility criteria does an applicant need to fall under to be granted a carer visa, other than the ones that you mentioned earlier?
The usual ones. So let's go through the list again. Sorry. The applicant needs to be a relative, eligible relative. Yeah, number one. And number two, the applicant either has to be here in Australia or has to be offshore. Number three, the applicant must satisfy the health and character assessment. So police checks are required, health checks are required. And that's it. I mean, usually these are the requirements. Of course, he has to prove the relationship, whatever he or she has mentioned as the relationship. The family tree has to be provided, and all the arms to all the nodes in the family tree has to be evidenced.
Now, can the applicant's family members also apply for the visa?
Yes. So, definition of family member is spouse and children. Children below the age of 18, yes, they can also be included in the application. But they all have to be at the same place, meaning they have to be either offshore or onshore, depending on where the main applicant is. So if the main applicant is in Australia, the rest are not in Australia, they cannot be part of the application. However, if they subsequently at a later stage travel to Australia, they can be added to the application through the standard procedure.
Now, as a sponsor, what are your obligations towards the visa holder?
The sponsor will have to take a sponsorship undertaking indicating that they are able to support the carer financially and provide accommodation.
For how many years is that?
On an ongoing basis, because this is a PR, so ongoing. There's no stipulated time frame to demonstrate, but they have to demonstrate they have the capacity, they have built the capacity till the date of application.
And can you touch upon the cost, the initial cost and the subsequent cost, second installment for the main applicant and the additional applicants?
The base application charge is $2,115 as of today. Base application meaning the primary applicant. The spouse and any children 18 years or over will have to pay $1,060, and any applicant, or rather any children below the age of 18 has to pay $530. They all have to be member of family unit, which means the children, all children under the age of 18 are included anyway, and any child between the age of 18 and 23 can be included if they are financially dependent on the primary applicant. For example, they are still studying. And any child who are completely dependent on the primary applicant because they do not have the ability to support themselves, for example, someone who is disabled, can be included at any age. However, note that those people who are probably disabled may fail the health test. And the rule of health test, do you know what it is? It is one fail, all fail. So even if you include or not include the family member, that family member has to go through the health check. And if any one of them fail, the entire application is doomed. So that one has to keep in mind.
And what about the second installment?
The second installment is 2,065 Australian dollars for all applicants regardless of age.
And when does the applicant have to pay the second installment?
At the time of grant, when the Home Affairs case officer is happy that the application is all good, only grant is pending, they send an email out asking for the payment to be made. Now, I just want to say something else, an important point before I forget. I have mentioned briefly about including a spouse.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if someone has a condition which requires permanent care and Bupa has okayed it, then his spouse, if that spouse has not applied for partner visa yet, can apply for carer visa onshore, if that person is onshore. Do you know what the benefit is?
No.
The cost. You're paying 2,000 plus another 2,000, which is 4,000, but the partner visa cost is 10,000.
But then how does the person who's here in Australia prove that he or she needs medical care to sponsor the spouse?
Yeah, so I just mentioned, provided that person requires care. Not everyone can go do this, but if the spouse has a condition, suppose they're married and then he met with an accident, unfortunately, I hope it doesn't happen to anyone, but if it does happen, God forbid, and he just got married, then that spouse can apply for carer visa instead of partner.
I understand, yeah. Now it's all clear.
Yep.
Great. Thank you for your time, Amitava.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have today, folks.
Okay.
And thank you for joining in, and see you next week again.
All right, thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.